All right, team, what are we thinking? You ready?
Yeah, let's dive in. I know some folks are still joining, but I think we go ahead and jump in here. We're five
Great.
after.
Well, we are so excited for today and really this week. Welcome everybody. This is a huge milestone for Elate and all the strategy leaders that we serve. If you've been following the past few weeks, you've probably felt some energy building. We launched our brand new brand film yesterday. We've been dropping some sneak peeks, talking about AI, and truly unveiling a completely new vision for strategy and how we come alongside strategy leaders. Today's the purpose of today. It's not necessarily a product demo. It's really a look behind the curtain as to the why behind Elate, the shift that we're seeing with AI and strategy, and we're going to hear it all from our founders. A couple housekeeping things. Everybody will get the recording. Feel free to drop questions and Q&A. Keep the chat lively, and we'll go from there. Thank you again for joining. I'm going to pass it off to Brooks and Abby, and I will be behind the scenes here if you need anything.
Perfect. Thanks for the intro, Tim. And it is great to see everyone here today. We're excited. This has been a long time in the making here, but I think Brooks and I are very excited for today for us to give kind of the first unveiling and live sneak peek of Strategy Advisor itself. But one of the things that we'll start by doing is just doing quick introductions. Again, saw a lot of familiar names and faces in the chat, but for those that don't know, my name's Abby Parker. I'm one of our co-founders and COO here at Elate. I get to work with a lot of our incredible customers that you're seeing here in the chat. But Brooks, I'll let you introduce yourself here as well, and then we'll dive into today's agenda.
Sure. And again, as Abby already mentioned, see a lot of familiar names, but we're also really excited for the new folks that we haven't had the chance to meet yet. Hopefully, we will here soon. But as Abby mentioned, my name is Brooks. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here at Elate. So we're looking forward to sharing a little bit more about Strategy Advisor, getting into a live look at it in action, and also in the process, just share a little bit about why Abby and I started Elate in the first place and some of the kind of backstory to what's led us here today. So really looking forward to the discussion today.
Perfect. Perfect segue into our agenda. As Brooks shared, it's really hard to just jump into today and to our launch yesterday of Strategy Advisor without recognizing how we've gotten to this point. So we want to spend some time sharing a little bit about what that looked like for us. We've been doing Elate for about 6 years, 7 years now. So we want to share some context there, really how that's led us to where we are today and frankly why we have the conviction and excitement that we do. And then we'll certainly get to the fun part where we actually will dive into Strategy Advisor a little bit. We want to leave time for Q&A at the end, but as Tim mentioned, as you have questions throughout, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A within the webinar, Zoom webinar here. We'll take a look at those. So by all means, please keep it interactive as we go, but otherwise we'll dive right in and Brooks, maybe I'll let you tell a little bit about um, the old way and the new way and how we think about this with why we started late in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. And so Abby and I have had the opportunity to work together for almost like 9 years now at this point, seven of which here at Elate. But just prior to launching Elate, both her and I were at an organization, helped scale that business from 5 employees to a couple hundred. I myself have been with orgs as large as Salesforce and SAP in the past as well. And one of the challenges we had just seen time and time again and felt real time working together in a past life was this disconnect that so often occurs between the long-term vision set at the leadership level and how that translates into tactical execution across the rest of the organization. And I think for a lot of organizations, the way in which strategic planning is done looks the same today as it did 3, 5, 10 years ago. And for a lot of organizations, it's still a very manual, cumbersome process where strategy lives in a lot of disparate tools and a lot of, frankly, spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides. And we as strategy and operations leaders are not only tasked with trying to bring all of that together to create some form of a unified view, but then as it relates to execution of the strategy and how we report on it, it's very inconsistent. When there's no unified view of here is the strategy itself, naturally what that leads to is a disconnect and how even individuals themselves not only provide updates to the parts of the strategic plan that they are owners of, but also how they define what is it that I own? And as we go through the course of the year, one of the things we know to be true, and I think every organization knows, is that the plan that's built at the beginning of the year is not going to be the plan that we finish with. It should evolve as we go through the course of the year and we have learnings of what's working and what's not. And so we just saw this lack of ability to get consistent updates, to make proactive decisions because of a lack of empowerment, even at the employee level, to have clear ownership into an individual or a team saying, here's how we're contributing to the strategy itself, ultimately led to why we built Elate, which was to shift this idea from strategy being isolated, being disparate, and being transactional to a more purposeful manner. It's being able to say and empower our team members to say yes to the right things and ultimately no to a lot of other things, or not now to a lot of other things that are going to ultimately come on their plate. And so when we built Elate, it was really with the idea that we're creating a unified view of strategy and one solution that ultimately drives kind of the operating rhythm and cadence for our organization. Create a frictionless, streamlined process for not just how do we roll out the plan, but then how do we measure the efficacy of the plan? Are we delivering on the things we said yes to, or do we need to pivot into other areas? And the only way to do this is to have clear visibility into the plan itself and ownership of the plan. Because when we can create that view, now what we're able to do is accelerate towards execution itself of a strategy versus just saying, we built a plan, we checked that box, we hope it works. And so this shift from the old way of doing strategic planning to more of a purposeful work and mentality around building a strategy that is connected throughout the organization was the intent that we look to solve for from day one, which is where now, as we come here to today's session, is why we're more excited than ever, because it feels as though this idea, and Abby, I'd love to get your perspective, feels more of a reality than it ever has.
Yeah, and I'll certainly get to that here in just a moment. But I think, Brooks, to double down on some of the things that you were saying, even as we're working with folks now, but also to Brooks's point, like we were both doing this before we started late. So by no means are we immune to these pains either. We have lived these in past lives, but I think so often I was constantly trying to figure out like chicken or the egg, like is it the unclear ownership that's causing the issue? Is it the inconsistent updates? Like which one comes first? And the reality is I think one of the things that we have philosophically latched on to is that it has to come together in a kind of three-pronged approach with the people, the process, and the solution. And I think that's what gets me excited about where we're at today is that I think that solution piece is finally coming alongside in a really meaningful way. But I just say, like, if these feel relevant to you, you're not alone. This is where a lot of customers that we're chatting with are starting at. But it is solvable, which is, I think, the incredible part. Historically, that solvable part has been required a lot of human intervention. So I'm assuming many people on this call can probably resonate with this. But the old way of thinking about planning was human only, brute force. Usually it falls onto a chief of staff, chief strategy officer, chief operating officer to figure out basically how do we take our strategic plan, these big visions that we all have, how do we bring it together? Not just like creating the initial plan and trying to get all that aligned, but then how do we actually track and execute on that? And Brooks, I'm sure this still rings in your ears as well, but one of the things that we got told over and over and over again when we were first starting is like strategy is too complex for technology to come enter into this. And I understand and appreciate that sentiment. Like I do think strategy is very complex. I do think the way a business moves, to your point, Brooks, like has to be and should be dynamic. And also, I think that saying that technology can't help supplement here is a really short-sighted view. And I know this is something that you and I have had conviction on for literally 7 years now. And we'll get to this inflection point of like where technology I think is finally getting to that gets you and I both most excited. But I think the reality for many of us was that we were just tasked with figuring it out. And strategy and operations leaders tend to be people who will eat the pain and spend the insane amount of hours doing the manual work, trying to pull things together from ununified sources. I can recall you and I doing this a lot with going into Jira, going into Salesforce, going into project management solution, just trying to get some sort of cohesive story that then the executive team you all could leverage. Um, but in our minds, the reason that we started late to begin with, to your point, Brooks, is because we we fundamentally did not believe that that had to be the answer. We thought there was a different way to do this. And so I think that this really captures like our core belief as strategy and operations leaders, our core belief as co-founders of Elate, but frankly, the belief that I think all of our customers and prospects that we chat with, we ask to enter into is to say, yes, humans absolutely need to be a part of this, but the answer is not human only, brute force, keep banging your head against a wall. The answer is how do we supplement you and get augmented with technology? And I think that there's a part where we've made a lot of progress in this, even in the last 5 to 10 years. But until now, I don't know that the tools that were available were fully ready to help this. But I think that they were helping a lot with some of them just mundane manual pieces, bringing things together. But what we've seen over the last year or so is this massive inflection point across all businesses, but I think in strategy in particular, that has paved this way for what we keep referencing as like the new era of strategy. And that feels like such a bold claim, but I do firmly believe that that is the right way to capture this, which is the technology has caught up, not in a way to replace humans. Again, we firmly believe that humans have to be at the center of strategy. There's just elements of how a business gets run that requires humans and requires us as strategy and operations leaders. But it's how does technology, and specifically in this case, AI, now unlock us as strategy and operations leaders to not be using our time on all those manual tasks, but instead be using our time for really the end goal of our role to begin with, which is to think about what needs to change, what information can I gather quickly using AI to then make and present the most important strategic decisions for my business so that, Brooks, back to your original point on this needing to be dynamic, we're no longer just making like siloed or really small decisions or frankly like very reactive decisions, but instead we're constantly adjusting with the way the world is adjusting or the way our business is adjusting. And so for us, I think this is why we get so excited. There is just this unlock that is happening, and we're incredibly excited and I think even humbled to be a part of it, where what has been possible in the past is no longer limited in that way. And so that is why we believe we are at this inflection point on strategy as a whole. But I know, Brooks, you've been at the forefront of this, talking to a lot of folks. So curious if you have any other things to add here.
Yeah, it's this the example that I oftentimes will leverage is, when we sit down with strategy and operations leaders, again, I think there's so often like the capturing of nuance and the intricacy of that organization, even the culture of the organization that has to be captured within the larger vision that an organization is casting. That those elements are really crucial in setting the direction for a strategy that supports where do we want to go organizationally. And so that's why there's always just going to be that requirement of the human part of this process. However, one of the examples that Abby and I used early on in our days of fundraising and has always been in the back of our minds is this idea that Elate serves as not just a thought partner, but a true guide, almost like depending on whether you use Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps, the idea that we can say, yeah, our vision is to go from point A to point B. Let's just say for the sake of this, Indianapolis to London. What we want Strategy Advisor to serve as is saying, here is the way that we can go from point A to point B in a variety of different ways, whether it's the most efficient way, a little bit slower, but efficient, and maybe avoiding tolls and cutting down on the overall costs, or maybe it's the fastest way. I don't care what I have to pay, but we want to get there as fast as we humanly can. Or maybe it's the scenic way. We want to take a few different routes, maybe go true planes, trains, and automobiles and how we get over into London itself. But the idea that we give a multitude of options and then allow an organization to evaluate as they're on that journey, what's the best fit for them with that stage and where they're at. And so this transitions into how in the world do we do that? How do we allow a strategy advisor to be tailored to the organization in a way that is specific? And that's where we want to really shift the conversation from like generic everyone can use it AI to AI really built with strategy as the backbone for the recommendations and the guidance it is providing. For us, there's three main feature sets that we incorporate into Strategy Advisor, and I'll get into these here in a little bit. For those that want like the full end-to-end demo, we're also going to do a more extensive demo on Friday with one of our team members, Ross Lovers, which I think you can register for here on this session. But the three features that we've built out are Plan Analyzer, Risk Navigator, and Reporting Assistant. Each of these address practical pains that we heard from strategy and operations leaders and the way they went about building, executing, and ultimately reporting on the progress of their strategic plans themselves. The first area that we start with is this concept called plan analyzer. For us, it's this idea that there are potentially in some organizations decades worth of decision points that are captured in board reports and company strategies and KPIs that tell a story of how were decisions made and how did those decisions yield results. What Plan Analyzer is a way in which you can take all of those offline documents, spreadsheets, PowerPoint slides, presentations, and upload them into Elate to help not just map your strategy into the platform for previous year's execution, as well as if you've got your 2026 strategy ready to go that you want to see mapped and brought to life within Elate, you can do that as well. But also start to give guidance and tailor the recommendations and the guidance that Strategy Advisor is providing based on all of that past context and those decisions that are really critical for how we navigate future decisions. One example we often use is, for an organization that maybe has a COO or a chief strategy officer who's started in the last 3 months, there's a lot of decisions they might not have visibility into. What we want to allow for is that offline documentation to be brought into Strategy Advisor to help provide them with that context that they may be missing in their 3 months into the role itself. So that's kind of foundationally how we start to train, how we start to think about the way in which Strategy Advisor is tailored towards that specific organization, is taking all of that PDF, spreadsheet, PowerPoint slide documentation and uploading it into the platform. When we have a plan that's built, whether it be through Plan Analyzer or through our services team, or frankly, just like if you want to take the old willpower and manually bring it into the platform, it's then, okay, once our plan is in place, how do we ensure that we're navigating it appropriately? One of the concepts we always like to think about is where do we persist versus pivot, and doubling down on the areas that we said yes to at the beginning that may need to either change or we're going to continue down that path for. Risk Navigator is our feature that helps detect what's going on in our plan. What do we need to be paying attention to? What are the true signals amongst all of the noise that is constantly being bubbled up throughout our organization, in a way where we now start to identify where the mission critical areas that we need to bring into our leadership team meetings themselves. Risk Navigator, as we'll touch on here, is pulling in a combination of things like integrations and data points from existing tools your teams will use, like Salesforce, HubSpot, Jira, even a Google Sheet or an Excel online file. It's also looking at the structure of that strategy, connected objectives throughout different teams or areas, looking at comment, sentiment, so that we can start to really pull to the surface the things we need to be paying attention to with the aim of helping leaders see around those corners. And then finally, Reporting Assistant. I say it a lot. It is the bane of existence for so many strategy leaders because they spend so many hours trying to pull together reports, trying to assemble all of that information into a view that gives guidance to leaders, helps them make decisions. But for so many folks, it is a very reactive snapshot that the second they put that report together, it is immediately out of date because it is a manual process being portrayed or illustrated in slides and spreadsheets. And we want a Reporting Assistant to be really, again, the living, breathing form of our strategy brought to life that drives an operating rhythm or cadence throughout the organization. So these are three of the areas that, again, our feature set we wanted to ensure were incorporated into Strategy Advisor because they are just challenges we hear time and time again so many leaders themselves face. So we're going to shift into a high-level overview. And again, for a truly extensive demo, we're going to have some time set aside on Friday, but we certainly want to get into Strategy Advisor here today. As we make that transition, Abby, anything you'd add to this thus far from what we've walked through?
No, I think you hit on that last piece with the reporting assistant is so key and critical. And we talk a lot about if you're a customer of ours, you've heard us use the language rituals or like operating cadence. But I think this reporting piece is the piece that I'm most excited about and the piece that frankly I feel like we've gotten the most even feedback on from early beta customers on this because at the end of the day, that is where like if you do all this, you create a great strategy, you have it connected, you're providing updates, but no one's looking at those, that's where that breakdown can happen from a decision-making standpoint. So again, I know we're going to go into that more with Ross on Friday. I'm excited to even talk through like what would go into those reports today as you go through the initial unveiling, Brooks.
Yeah. Perfect. And so with that, welcome to Elate, or for those that are familiar, welcome back. If you've seen the Elate platform, right out the gates, there's not going to be a lot radically different from the platform that you see here today. Hopefully this looks familiar, but one of the things that's really important to note is that think of Strategy Advisor really as the AI layer over the entirety of your plan, the entirety of our platform. As you know, anytime you're looking at a strategy, there is a lot of different indicators of what's going on, where do I need to be paying attention to? And we want Strategy Advisor to, again, help cut through the noise and really identify where we need to be drawn towards and helping to engage with our strategy itself. So just for a lay of the land, that for those that aren't familiar with Elate, this is our strategy. Think of it as like a plan on a page, so to speak, where we start to begin with is operating outcomes. Where so many organizations kind of miss the mark is the disconnect between our operating plan, what are we communicating success looks like to our shareholders, our board of directors, in the form of just true, here are the basic business KPIs we need to have in place. Things like revenue or net retention, gross margin, these being the drivers for then the strategy and how it comes to life. So underneath operating outcomes are then organizational themes that we can identify. Think of these as pillars or rallying cries for the year itself. Underneath these themes are where like quarterly objectives or rocks, depending on vocabulary, where those quarterly initiatives will live. As we think about Strategy Advisor, anywhere you see kind of this purple gradient or diamonds and sprinkles, that is going to be indicative of Strategy Advisor being prevalent or present. So in this case, if I want to better understand like why is revenue off track, you can easily select this view to see, okay, revenue is behind 25%. You likely do not need Strategy Advisor or even Elate to tell you where are we at against our revenue targets. What we want to focus on though is identifying the objectives or the areas of the organization that are having the most significant impact on why our revenue is behind 25% today. The same can be done in more of that hierarchy view, where again, here at the top, we have those annual themes, but underneath are the quarterly objectives that are connected to those themes themselves. In this case, we're looking at quarterly objectives across engineering, sales, product that are connected into our ability to drive sustainable revenue growth. As you can see, if you clicked on Q2 new business, you can start to go down through different areas of the organization to see how are we supporting all the way down to hire ahead of marketing and the contributions being made to our ability to hit our new business targets. But in this example, if we want to better understand like why is launching this Atlas product behind, all you would have to do is simply click on Strategy Advisor. You can see that there's 5 tactics in this case, or think of them as projects in a lot of instances, work streams that are linked to this product launch. In this case, directly being pulled from Jira that indicate to us or give us an idea as to why this product release is behind. Similar to the revenue number, if we wanted to learn more, we can start to drill into that objective itself. All of the information here on the right is set up as we are building out our strategy, purpose statement, duration, ownership. But what you'll also notice is that there is a structure that can be mapped in Elate around here's how all of these objectives are connected together and supported across the organization. What you'll notice though is that on this, we're not only providing kind of a summarization of like, why is this objective itself at risk? We're also pulling out information on this objective as well as objectives connected to it or things occurring across the rest of the organization that are driving why this is behind. In this example, we're pulling out comment sentiment or updates being provided across team members in different areas to show, look, here are some of the main drivers as to why this product release is behind. Now, you can always drill into this commentary. You can always go follow this further into those child objectives connected to this. You can also ask Strategy Advisor for potential recommendations or even to provide a summary. And we hear all the time, like, taking what's going on this objective in a very succinct summary to then include in reports is a common ask that we'll have. So you have the ability to just get a quick summary of this, copy it over into a report. But the idea is that we're giving kind of that full view of what's truly occurring on this objective. Now, again, we're not going to go into every area of the platform, But what I will say is that here on the left-hand side of the screen, whether you're an Elate user for 7 years now, or if you're new to the platform for the first time, Reporting Assistant, Risk Navigator, and Plan Analyzer are the three feature sets that we identified at the onset that we really wanted to bring to life. Ross is going to be going into a full demo of each of those areas themselves. But one use case that Abby and I did want to highlight even here today is even the question of like, look, that update, all of that comment sentiment is fantastic on launching this new product feature. Give us, this would be a dream scenario for us. I can't get my employees to provide this level of update. All they do is just tell me, is their objective behind, at risk, or on pace? And even that being done in a timely manner is a bit of an ask at times. And so one of the things we want to have Strategy Advisor help facilitate is increasing not just the quality of updates being provided, but also the timeliness itself. And so one other feature set within Strategy Advisor really aimed at the employees themselves and raising the level of information being provided is AI-powered updates as well. In this example, you can see that I'm the owner of this specific objective. If I want to go in and provide a quick on-pace update to this objective, you're going to see that I'm actually going to be prompted with a draft comment that Strategy Advisor is putting together based on what it's seeing occur, not only on this objective, but also those other child and parent objectives, as well as the status trend and any other commentary that's being provided through the organization. You can see there's a natural kind of template that we're recommending and helping to guide folks down. The idea being that, hey, this isn't just a clean slate where employees are like, I didn't really know what to put, or I just put on pace because that's what it is. No, we want to, again, push towards a more qualified or quality update. They can always come in, accept or reject that update itself. They can rewrite it. So maybe the tone in which this is written or the information being outlined isn't quite what they want to show. So they can rewrite it with different context itself. But the idea is that if we're increasing not just the update, but also the way in which we're starting to provide this into commentary that's being pulled for things like reports, now all of a sudden the information at our disposal is going to help drive more proactive decisions. So again, we want to kind of provide a sneak peek into what this starts to look like here today. But Abby, anything else, I guess, on this area so far that you'd highlight?
No, I think the things that get us most excited about Brooks, one of which you just showed is that the AI status update. But to me, what that really unlocks is better quality visibility into the risks. And so I feel like most of the folks who are probably on this call, like that is the piece that like immediately gives me heartburn to think about going and trying to track down or even trying to like synthesize all of that. It's not that we as humans aren't capable of it. It's that like the amount of time that would take is a lot, and how much time are we not spending then making actions? And so I think that's been one of the pieces Brooks and I had a feedback session this morning where we got to see that live in action and kind of hear some of the value provided there. But yeah, as I think about like a strategy or operations leader of frankly any size organization, but even just a few hundred, you start to think of a lot of status updates to try to consolidate together and ultimately make decisions off of. And I think that this piece here that you're showing, the risk navigator that brings us together and powers and is powered by all of those commentary pieces is what gets me most excited at like the true value unlock of where we as humans can be supplemented on the manual stuff and how we can then best leverage our brains on strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, I can speak for ourselves, Abby. There's so many conversations
Yeah.
we've sat in, both at Elate, for better or for worse, but also previously, where even the discussion at the leadership meeting is guided by what is most urgent today or what fires have come up this week versus where do we really need to focus our time and energy based on like the things that truly have the most impact across the organization. And so that's what we want Risk Navigator to serve as. You can see, you can create a report directly from here, summarize risks, but the idea is that we want to keep front and center, not just the the objectives that are at risk at all. We want to see like kind of a risk score associated to it. Like how big of a risk does this pose in our ability to deliver on our strategy itself? And so again, the idea that we're providing summaries here, even stack ranking based on high, medium, and low, where the risks lie within our business is a really important piece that helps fuel Reporting Assistant, where we're auto-generating reports, sending those out to team members, with that summary and those draft updates provided. But it's also like as we're uploading these documents through Plan Analyzer, how we're starting to now even train Strategy Advisor to think about what are those like non-negotiables within a plan that have to be reported on, have to be front and center for a leadership team at all times. So again, we're really excited because this is that ability to truly have a thought partner. We've gone through the ability to see all this information in a unified view. We're going to dive into, okay, well, how do we, once we've identified a risk, translate this into reports that can be sent out and shared on Friday? But the idea behind this is we want to drive action. We want to ensure that this information isn't just staying static and Elate. We really want to have a bias to action where, yes, AI is going to create time savings and efficiency, but how do we make sure that those are realized gains, not just our employees are saving a bunch of time? It's what are they then able to do with that time they're saving? And it's taking intervention, taking action based on things like identifying risk or even tracking down reports that can be shared out to those other leaders. So again, we're really appreciative of everyone that's helped us get here. I know we've got some time set aside here towards the end for Q&A, and I'm sure I cannot see anything right now as I'm sharing my screen, but I'm sure we've got some questions. But Abby, I'll hand back over the screen share to you here.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, to your point, Brooks, a couple of questions rolling in here, but for those who haven't had a chance yet, in the bottom of your Zoom, you should see the ability to enter in the Q&A. So feel free to drop some questions there, and we'll try to tackle as many of those as we can here in the next few minutes. That said, the one thing I did want to add, Brooks, as you were kind of wrapping up that demo before we start to answer a couple of these questions, is I think so often it's really easy in hindsight, like hindsight is 2020, to see where things went off track. But I think so often it's really hard in the moment to capture those. And so I think the piece that I've been really excited about is starting to hear some of these stories around like the proactive identification of things that, to your point, may not have gotten brought up because it wasn't the brightest fire that day, but it was going to be 2 months down the road. And I think that's the piece that gets me most excited. All right, while we're letting a few of these roll in, we can just start with top of mind. Brooks, you'll love this one because it's where you love to live. Kind of open-ended question here of what's next for Strategy Advisor?
Yeah, so as we think about where the future goes with Strategy Advisor, one of the things that we know is going to be front and center is that ability to have Plan Analyzer, even taking like strategic planning and previous documents that are like company KPIs, things like that, and allow the information that's occurring really in a real-time manner, day-to-day, to start to like drive updates, drive action from our platform. So one suggestion that we have and one thing that we're ideating on is the ability to even take like meeting transcriptions, being able to say if a leadership meeting, as an example, is being recorded in Zoom or in Microsoft Teams, how do we take what's being discussed, those main areas of focus, the action items that are set aside, and also like updates that we're getting on objectives across the organization, and take all of those meeting insights and map them to the Elate platform and allow that transcript to be uploaded into Plan Analyzer to just have that information mapped to the strategy and specifically the execution or the reports that are being sent out to those individuals. So that's a really exciting thing for us because, again, when we think about Elate, we really want it to drive that operating rhythm or cadence for an organization. So being able to integrate into specifically those meetings themselves is going to be valuable. I did see one come in around integrations. And so Elate does integrate into a number of different tools, and all of our integrations can, I think, be found on our website itself. But integrations from typically CRM platforms, project management tools, again, sheets, whether it be Google Sheet, Excel, even a smart sheet, are very common for us in terms of the integrations themselves to pull in. Anywhere that I'll just quickly go into this, replace current share. any current customer of Elate and or future, you'll always be able to find our integrations here within your account and connect directly here. Being able to look at all CRM ticketing spreadsheets are some of the more common ones that we see.
Yeah. If there is, I know that was submitted, it looks like by an anonymous attendee. So if there are specific ones you're curious about, let us know. I would say we usually have a pretty wide swath there.
Mm.
Another question I saw come in is around, and this is, I think, Brooks, something we've talked about a lot in the past, is looking at AI to help do what if scenarios. So the example
Mm.
they gave is like, what if a tariff on X is going to impact our strategic plan or other external trends? The other thing they mentioned is like, here's our plan. What are other competitors doing in adjacent spaces? So some of that, I think, to your point, what you were originally talking about with the Waze for your business or Google Maps piece. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. So I think one of the things we have the luxury of the, I guess, ideal scenario is we've been working with organizations for 7 years and we have a lot of best practices. We've seen a lot of strategic plans and have a lot of insight into what works and what doesn't. And so those are naturally built in as we tested Strategy Advisor. We want to make sure like we were pressure testing, like how do we identify overweight teams or overcapacity individuals? So those are built into the platform itself as best practices, things that we want to identify. One of the other cool things that we want to start to incorporate are those external changes at more of the macro level versus specifically within your strategy or looking at just the strategic planning motion itself and bring in those macro trends to help identify, hey, how is this, as an example, increase to tariffs going to ultimately impact our strategy itself? So it's for us, that's kind of the next iteration of where we want to go, especially into 2026, is that blend of like very much tailored to that organization, tailored towards the strategic planning process itself and best practices, frameworks, things like that. And also bringing in those macro conditions and how they should be informing or identifying it. So there's going to be a lot around that and benchmarking as well, like looking at how you compare to other organizations of similar size or similar industry that we're thinking about for 2026.
Yeah. Quick question for Michelle in the chat. Yes, you will have access to the recording of the session. We'll make sure to share that out. There's another question in the chat here around what's the experience been like with change management slash onboarding for new customers? I'm happy to speak to this. The team that oversees that whole function is incredible on our end, but one of the things that I mentioned earlier, and I think has always been philosophically something Brooks and I feel passionately about, is that when we think about strategy, there are humans involved. And so that change management component is really, really critical. But I also am a firm believer that you don't have to change everything at once. And you can think about what are the most like meaningful things to impact change and why. So one of the things that is really important to us from the onset is that we align with our customers on what the current state of the people, process, and solution looks like so that we know what we're entering into and can always be mindful of that as we're then thinking about working with our end customers, employees, and what we're going to be asking of them. And for us, a really critical part of this is always understanding what are we going to be asking them to change, and what are they getting from that? What is the benefit that they see? And so wanting to be really, really mindful of that. It's part of the reason that one, we've built Elate the way we have, where when we're saying what are we asking to change, ideally it's not much. They're probably spending a lot of hours putting together PowerPoints, as is. What we're saying is spend less time there, give quick status updates, whether that for many of our customers is directly through Microsoft Teams or Slack, depending on what your organization uses. But most employees are incredibly, and especially like even leaders, director level leaders, are incredibly hungry for insight into where they're going and how their work connects. It's why Brooks mentioned earlier we want to shift to this purposeful work. And so a lot of times what we have found is that once we understand like, okay, what is the lift of this, which is very, very light, they understand that the benefit that they're getting is not just seeing visibility up, but also seeing visibility out. And so we talk a lot about the connection north and south, but also east and west, and starting to understand how other functional areas of the organization are performing, how it connects to what they're doing. They start to get to see around corners. And so those are all important things that we keep in mind when we're going through onboarding and ultimately training your team, not just at the onset, but as new folks join or as you roll out to maybe more members within your organization. Those are all things that we keep in mind. So we'd be happy to answer more specific questions on that, but I think it is a really valid question because it's something we give a lot of thought, time, and attention to as we're going through the implementation process.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that I think Abby and our services account management team do a wonderful job of is not just enablement of how to use a platform, but truly enablement of like the why behind introducing Elate into an organization's week to week, month to month rhythm. I think oftentimes employees themselves, when they get new technology and they're just trained on how to use it without the context of why, is this something that's really going to help remove hurdles, alleviate some of the challenges they're facing, and how to prioritize the right things? Or even when they hear from leaders like, we got to move faster, like at what? When we can start with that cultural element and the why and building a playbook for success, that always, in my experience at least, is a significant driver to true adoption and engagement versus just good luck. Here's how to use this new tool that you're getting introduced.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're right at 1:45 here Eastern time, and we've got folks all over the globe here, so want to be mindful of that. There's a few questions we couldn't get to. We'll follow up with you all if we didn't get to your question here, and then again, everyone will get this recording as well. But to Brooks's point earlier, if you want to join us on Friday for a far more in-depth demo, that is linked in the resources tab here below. So go ahead and register for that. It'll be led by Ross Lebers, and he'll go into a lot more depth there. If you have other just general questions you want to chat with us more, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. So both Brooks and I can be reached at abby@goalate.com or brooks@goalate.com. Or if you're already working with someone on our team, feel free to go through them. But just want to say thank you all for joining, for keeping the discussion lively, for giving us a chance to share a bit about, frankly, what so many members of our team have been working so hard on, and we're getting to Brooks and I then get the gift of getting to unveil that. It's truly been a pleasure.
Thank you all. Appreciate the time.